وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ سُوءًا يُجْزَ بِهِ. Whoever would do an evil deed will be compensated with it. You know, these ayat are important to understand in their context, even though it seems like this ayah has a universal, whoever does an evil deed will be compensated with it. Well, see, the ayah is about amani. And if you don't understand that it's part of the same discussion, then you can come to very wrong conclusions. Allah says, whoever does an evil deed will be paid with it. Actually, whoever does an evil deed can also get forgiven, can't they? If you just look at whoever does an evil deed will be compensated with it, that would mean their forgiveness, tawbah, the conversion of evil deeds into good deeds, all of that stuff, where does that go? Well, it's the people who have false hopes. People of false hopes think all their deeds are not, evil deeds are going to be forgiven whether they change their behavior or not. So they have to be told a stern answer. So this stern answer is not for all humanity, it's for those who are deluded into false hopes. What they need to hear is, no, you're thinking Allah's mercy is going to overshadow all of His justice. Whoever does an evil deed will be compensated by means of it. وَلَا يَجِدْ لَهُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ وَلِيًّا وَلَا نَصِيرًا. And he will not find anyone besides Allah in order to be a helper for himself, to be an aid, a protective friend, nor a helper. Nasir is someone who comes to your help all the time, and Nasir is also someone who comes to your help at the time of trouble. Nasr is the help that comes when you're in trouble. وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِنَ الصَّالِحَاتِ مِنْ ذَكَرٍ أَوْ أُنْثَى. And whoever would do any kind of good deed, whether they be a male or female, مِنْ ذَكَرٍ أَوْ أُنْثَى, from male or female. وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ. And at the same time, this person was a mu'min. And this is part of what was already initiated early on in the discourse of this surah. One of the joys of Jannah being that believers get to be together. And one of the terrors of hellfire being that disbelievers get to be alone. So we're seeing another indication of that. It goes from huwa mu'min to فَأُولَٰئِكَ يَدْخُلُونَ الْجَنَّةَ يعني سَيَدْخُلُونَ الْجَنَّةَ مَعًا مَعَ بَعْضٍ. They're going to be entering Jannah together. Whole groups of them. وَلَا يُظْلَمُونَ نَقِيرًا. And they're not going to be wronged, even a naqir. I'm hoping you remember what naqir means. It's the dent inside a date, that little bump, if you could fit something. Naqarat tayr is also used in Old Arabic when a bird picks up from its beak. Little bits and pieces that it picks up. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ دِينًا مِمَّنْ أَسْلَمَ وَجْهَهُ لِلَّهِ. Who could be better in terms of religion, in terms of choosing a way of dealing with themselves and others, than the one who submitted his face to Allah? This is literally, of course, the act of sajda, أَسْلَمَ وَجْهَهُ لِلَّهِ. But more figuratively, their attitude, their pride. Wajh is also the place of our pride. In so many civilizations, including the Arabs, when you honor somebody, it's the symbol of that honor is worn on the head. Whether that be a crown, or that be, some kind of hat, like generals and, different people, different ranking officers have headwear, right? Or tribal members have some kind of turban, special turbans they wear. So the face and the head is the place of honor. So when we submit in sajda to Allah, it's like we're saying we have no pride, no honor before you. All of that, the point of my pride has now been brought down. So they submit their pride before Allah. He submits his pride before Allah. وَهُوَ مُحْسِنٌ. And he reaches a state of ihsan. So you go here in the ayah from Islam all the way to ihsan. It starts أَسْلَمَ وَجْهَهُ. And then the only sky is that once you submit yourself to Allah, then you can progress and progress and progress until you reach the state of ihsan. And speaking of ihsan, that means that you're going to be like, which prophet? That's the model of ihsan? Ibrahim alayhi salam. وَاتَّبَعَ مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا. Ibrahim alayhi salam also, if you think of it, all of his behavior represents ihsan. Right? It's excellent. It's constantly in recognition of Allah's presence. But when Allah describes him, He says, إِذْ قَالَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ أَسْلِمْ. Right? His starting point is Islam, and he reaches ihsan. So Allah talks about Islam here, goes to ihsan and says, and thus he will have followed the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam, Hanifan, who had always been in a state, his state was always of being focused towards Allah. Hanaf, not being this way or that way. Janaf, to have bias. Hanaf, to not have any bias. Not have any other inclination. He's solely focused towards Allah Azza wa Jal. وَاتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ خَلِيلًا. The iltifat in this ayah is really remarkable. Just from a spiritual point of view too. On the one hand, you have someone trying to reach the state of ihsan in which they're trying to get close to Allah. So the slave is trying to get close to Allah. By the time the ayah ends, Allah says that Allah came close to the slave. وَاتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ خَلِيلًا. Ibrahim alayhi salam, Allah took Ibrahim alayhi salam as a near and dear friend, a close friend, Khalil. By the way, khulla in Arabic, khulla is close, intimate friendship. Friends between whom there are no formalities is khulla. This is khulla. So Allah took Ibrahim alayhi salam as a very close friend. Walillahi, by the way, what other word for friend came today? Rafiq. Rafiq we also saw before. وَلِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. And to Allah alone, whatever's in the skies and whatever's in the earth, it exclusively belongs to Him. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ مُحِيطًا. And Allah is in complete encompassing of all things. He's encircled everything. In other words, Allah Azza wa Jal reminds us, what is the conclusion of the state of ihsan? What is the one thing that, if you really reach the state of ihsan, what is that one idea that dominates all of your thought? Is that Allah owns everything. I own nothing. I'm entitled to nothing. I can accomplish nothing. It is entirely in Allah Azza wa Jal's hands. All difficulties are nothing because they're in Allah's hands. I don't have to vie for what anybody else has. I don't have to be jealous of what anybody else has because Allah has given me. I can't possibly take pride in anything I do because it's given by Allah Azza wa Jal. This statement seems very generic. Everything in the skies and the earth exclusively belongs to Allah. But really it is this one statement that you've given ownership, credit entirely all the time to Allah Azza wa Jal. If you can live a life and I can live a life thinking about that and being aware of that in everything we say and do, that is ihsan. That is what ihsan amounts to. So, وَكَانَ اللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ مُحِيطًا. And Allah has completely encircled and has remained in complete encircling of all things. I tend to think of the case of Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Very interesting, we don't bring these things up in common discourse. Ali radiallahu anhu, of course, married to Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha, is considering marrying another woman. Thinking about it. Fatima finds out. She gets really upset. She goes to the Prophet ﷺ. He's thinking about marrying another one. Rasul ﷺ calls Ali. So you're thinking about marrying another wife? Now it's the father of the daughter asking the husband, you're thinking about another wife? And he says, yeah, I was thinking about it. And he says, whoever hurts Fatima hurts me. That's all he said to him. Right? What did this story, this narration, what does it teach? And Ali obviously did not marry somebody else after that. That the wife being hurt by the marriage of another, by husband marrying, he can't just slap sharia in her face and quote it, مَثْنَا وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ هَلْ تَكْفُرِينَ بِالْآيَةِ. You do kufr of the ayah. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا آمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. That's, you could do that. But what did the hadith teach us? That part of injustice is hurting the feelings. In some cultures there's a norm. There's some cultures are weird. They're like, for us, at least for me, it's weird. Their second wife, the first wife looks for the second wife. They do that. It's weird. But they do it. It's fine. Good for you. Then there are cultures, if you're thinking about a second wife, the first wife will become suicidal. Then remind yourself of Fatima's situation. Because what the messenger speaks, he doesn't just speak on his own behalf. He speaks on behalf of all fathers of all daughters. He's not just the father of Fatima radiallahu anha. He's the father of all daughters. He represents all of them when he makes these kinds of statements. We can't just reduce that to his personal, preference. So, everything he does is guidance. Alayhi salatu wassalam. So we overlook these things, Sharia says it's halal, have fun. And among guys, I tell you, the guys that are having the most marital difficulties are the ones that joke about polygamy the most. That's just a fact. No, I'm looking for a second one right now. Because you can't handle one, right? Because you're going to be really, really handle two. Your track record clearly indicates you've just hit it out of the park with the first one. So you're more than ready to handle a second and make another woman's life amazing. That's what you're saying, So, these things have become trivial for us, or people use or misrepresent the religious teachings because they take what they think whatever conclusion they'd like to take and cite that as the actual principle, which they're not.